What's going on, everybody? Boonjamin Choy here, back with another F122 video, and today's going to be episode 2 of our Master Rank series. So today we're going to be starting the episode off like we did in the first one at Jeddah, and I think there were only 2 of us that actually set a qualifying time, myself and the guy in P2. Everybody else either were disqualified, DNF'd, or jumped into the lobby after qualifying. So the only other driver that I have a time on is Flen's 1989 in P2, and everybody else, I'm not really sure of their pace. But we ended up finishing a second and a half, I think, in front of Flen's 1989 anyway. So as long as we get a decent start to this race and get out in front of him, we should be okay. But take a look at the guys behind us. I'm not using any assists other than the racing line. The races now start off with cold tires because of a bug. Damn you, Codemasters. But I'm having to drive super conservatively and take corners really tentatively. But look at these guys. They're pushing with... They must have traction control on. There's no way they're able to push this hard. And you'll see towards the end why I say there's no way they should be able to push this hard. But anyway, 72-degree tires here. Having to really feather the throttle. I can't go flat out. But look at the car behind me. He's right on my ring. Right on my wing. How is that possible? He must be using traction control or something like that, because there's no way in hell that he's not using any assists and able to stay that close behind me. Just look at how quickly he starts to drop back. So I'm not making fun of him or anything like that, but just looking at his lap times during the race, I don't understand how he was able to stay that close to me unless he was using traction control. Which brings me to my point. Traction control seems to be really OP. I have actually done tests in Grand Prix mode, and using medium traction control on the starts with 70-degree tires is way more OP than just trying to do a manual race start. So I really hope that Cody's gets that issue fixed soon, just because I don't want to have to start using medium traction control just to be able to compete with these guys. But anyway, we had a pretty decent start, but there was so much traffic behind us, and they were all closing in on me during that first turn that I ended up breaking. I ended up outbraking myself and having to cut that corner. And because I didn't feel like it was really fair, so I didn't want to push too much. I let this guy go out in front of me, and I was so pretty confident that we had the pace on him anyway, just because, like I said, we qualified a second and a half in front of him. So as you can see, our ERS charge is still at pretty much 100%. I'm not really using it at all on these first 2 laps. And the guy in front looks like he's doing pretty well. Maybe not taking the corners perfectly, or not that well. Flen's 1989, if you're watching this, I think you're braking a little bit too late, my man. It looks like you're going deep into a whole bunch of these corners. Not trying to pick on you or anything like that. It looks like you have pretty decent pace, but I think you need to start braking a little bit earlier and avoiding the walls, because I think he hit that wall quite a few times while I was stuck behind him, and it looked like a lot of the corners that I was gaining time on him at. It looks like he was braking way too late and going really deep into those corners. So yeah, Flens, if you're watching, or if anybody that's watching this is taking corners like this guy, I advise to brake a little bit earlier, because I saw what he was doing, and I realized that there was really no point using that much battery to try and get out in front of him, just because I could just gain time on him through a whole bunch of corners anyway. So, but yeah, let's start lap 3 now. This Apita guy in P3 has worked his way up to P3 from the back of the grid. I don't think he qualified. I think he jumped in after qualifying had started. So at this point in the race, I was still so focused on the guy in P1 that I really didn't notice him jumping up to P3. And it does kind of worry me later on in the race, but at this point I'm still not really focused on the times and the positions in the top left corner yet. Just trying to get out in front of this guy, because I realized that everybody else is 4 seconds behind us. I'm assuming that at the current moment they're not really a threat, so I'm focusing all of my energy on this guy out in front. And again, he goes in a little bit deep in that corner. I think he's just braking too late, so just braking a little bit earlier will definitely help that issue. Took that one okay. So now we are within DRS I activate it through this DRS zone here just to kind of close it up a little bit. I'm gonna make my move on the start finish straight. I've already decided that, so now we've closed up to right behind him. Gonna get DRS again down this next straight. Jeddah is really easy to overtake just because all three DRS zones are like right next to each other. I didn't keep DRS on for that long. I didn't turn it on right away just because I didn't want to be right on his rear wing. There was a bit of a gap there coming out of that corner, but I thought better of making the move there and just decided to wait until the straight here. And luckily for us, as soon as we finished, or as soon as we past the finish line, his light started blinking there, so it made this move somewhat pretty easy for us, and that was about it. And now that I'm out in P1, I can start to kind of watch the times now up on the leaderboards there, and now I noticed that this Apita guy is in P3, so he is still about 5 seconds behind us, but the fact that he's made his way up to P3 from the back of the grid does have me worried a little bit. So every straight that we hit, I'm just checking on the gap to P3 just to make sure that he's not closing in too quickly. And as you can see there, just through the end of that sector there, we've extended the gap to both P2 and P3. So at this point, I'm assuming that I've got the race in hand, unless Apita is holding back his pace for one reason or another. But eventually I realized that the gap is going to continue to extend to both of the drivers behind us anyway. So that was pretty much it. Once we got out in front of Flens 1989 there, we ended up staying up there without having to worry about too much. I think this is the closest that any drivers actually finished behind me, apart from the race at France in the first episode, just because we were rear-ended twice there. But yeah, in all the ranked lobby races so far, all 5 of them that I've done, Flens 1989 is probably the one to stay the closest to us. So I think almost every other race, everybody else finished like almost a minute behind us in 25% races. I'm always happy when I see the track vote for Jeddah, just because it is one of my stronger tracks. I think in time trial, I'm in like the top 450 on PC. I know it's not a top 10 time, but it's still pretty good. Top 1%, I believe it is. And just from this race and the race in the first episode, it looks like it's not a very strong track for a whole bunch of drivers. So anytime I see Jeddah come up on the track vote, I'm usually pretty excited, because I know it'll be at the very least a podium for us, if not a win, so long as we stay out of trouble in the race. I kind of wonder why this track gets voted on a lot. I just, like I said, it doesn't seem to be a very strong track, but I think what it is because the corner cutting stringency is set to regular, and a bunch of people will probably just figure that they can cut corners and stuff like that through this track and not have to worry about being penalized. I think maybe that's why it's an easy track to kind of cut corners and do well on when the corner cutting is set to regular. But anyway, we end up winning by 20 seconds. And yeah, this is victory number 3 out of 4. So we'll jump into the next race. And as you can see on your screen, we are at Spa. I was the only one to set a qualifying time here. Everybody else either DNF or were disqualified. There were only 5 of us anyway. And then by the time the race started, one of the guys left the lobby. So I don't have any times to really compare myself to. My qualifying time was actually pretty shit. I think it was like 4 seconds slower than my personal best, but that was because I think there was light rain, or at least the track was lightly wet, just because there was no grip. So starting the race here, I'm a little bit worried just because there were no times set by the other guys. But we actually get a pretty decent start. I think this is probably the best race start we've had out of any race, because we didn't get jumped by anybody. So you see top 3 are on softs and Sir Stromingen on mediums as he DNFs through turn 1 there. And now we have P2 and P3 battling through Eau Rouge as we look to extend our gap. I wasn't really going to show this race just because it was kind of boring. I was just going to do like the first sector of this lap and then maybe the last lap or something. But there is a lesson to be learned here, and if you just take a look at the map and on the timing charts there, why are these two guys battling so hard on the first lap? Look, if you find yourself fighting against somebody with similar pace on the first lap, if you're in P2 or P3, if you're in the position of these two guys here, you see the leader is extending the gap. He's over a second ahead. You're fighting this guy that seems to have similar pace to you. The gap is extending. Now it's at 2 seconds. At this point, one of them should be smart enough to say, okay, I'm going to stop fighting. I'm just going to, obviously I'm not that much faster than this other guy. Otherwise, we wouldn't be swapping positions constantly like this or being this close. One of them has to be smart enough to stop fighting, cede the position, and tuck into the rear wing of the guy in P2 and hope to God that they can catch up to the leader. That's what they probably should have done. But instead, they continue to fight. And look at this. Coming into the final chicane on lap 1, they're still fighting. The gap is now 3 seconds. If they had any chance to win, they pretty much lost it just from this fighting on the first lap. And then now we've started lap 2. Doesn't seem like they've learned their lesson, because going into turn 1, they're still fighting. Going up through Eau Rouge and Radion, they're still fighting, and now the gap is 4 seconds. Look, I don't think they would have had a chance to beat me anyway, just from their pace. But if you find yourself in that position, like in a league race or something like that, do yourself a favor and don't fight that hard, especially in a lobby this small. You're guaranteed a podium anyway, but if you stop fighting, there's a chance to win the race. If you fight as hard as these two guys do, the best you're going to do is P2. And look at that. I think we're only halfway through lap 2 now, and we've already got 5 seconds, almost 6 seconds to these guys. So, yeah, like I said, this is a rather boring race for me, but there was a lesson in here that I thought I might be able to share with you guys, and that's just, you're not doing yourselves any favors fighting this hard in the first lap or so. I guarantee you they've blown through all of their ERS anyway, so even if they were quicker than me or on the same level of pace as I am, now they've got nothing to fight with because they were fighting so damn hard. And then WJ Hermsen ends up getting the worst end of the stick there, and I'm not really sure what happened. I can't see it on the replay, but yeah, he ends up DNFing after he boxes. So yeah, if you can take anything away from this boring long race at Spa, it's don't fight so much on the first 2 laps that you put yourself out of a potential win there. They were never going to win anyway, just because look at this gap here. We finished a minute ahead of P2, and then P3 didn't even finish the race. But yeah, like I said, I didn't want to really show much of this, but that is a valuable lesson that I see way too often as well too. This isn't an isolated event. I see that constantly all the time. Luckily for me, I happen to be on the winning end of that battle and not stuck behind them, but I end up losing a whole bunch of time when I'm starting from the back of the grid due to guys fighting that hard on the first few laps, and then we all end up losing time. So yeah, really boring race for me, but this is the last of our placement races, and we should be getting a ranking at the end of this race. I know this was a really short episode, but I kind of wanted to cut it off at the end of the promotional races and then start another one up once we do get our ranking, and then I assume we'll probably be facing a little bit higher tier of driver, just because now we will have our ranking. We'll be going up against other guys that have finished their placement races. There were a few guys with ranks in these races, but they were kind of lower. They were like bronze rated drivers or like single or double silver rated drivers, so they weren't exactly the quickest. But now that we've finished this last race, we will get our ranking, and I'm sure it'll not be quite as easy from now on as well, and hopefully we'll get a better variety of races, just because in last year's game it seemed like we were always racing at Bahrain and Austria, and already in this year's game we've seen Jeddah quite a few times, and even in the unranked lobbies we see I end up usually racing at the same like 4 or 5 tracks over and over again, because those are the only tracks people like to race at. But hopefully we'll see a bigger variety of races now that we've got our ranking, and I'm gonna spoil it for you. Oh wait, no, here it is. All right, so yeah, we get a triple silver. I'm assuming that second place in France cost us a single gold rating, but I'll take the triple silver, and then we'll work our way up to gold. But yeah, thank you guys for watching this. I know that the races weren't exactly exciting today, but I just wanted to do the last episode of the 2 races of our placement races. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more. Remember to eat your bok choy, and I will see you guys in the next one.